Before I start the introduction, I just wanted to gauge the audience here. Raise up your hand. How many of you are investors? And keep raising your hand if you're investing into healthcare. Wow, that's pretty good. How many of you are startup business owners? Out of those, how many of you are healthcare? Okay, majority of you are healthcare, so you will understand in case they use any jargons from the healthcare, so that's a good sign. I'll make the intro and then I'll ask each of my panelists to introduce themselves. As you can see from their names and their experience, I had the honor of talking to each one of them, and they are powerhouse. They themselves into their own realm. And you will see when they make their intro. I am Shashi Tripathi. My background is also all healthcare life sciences. Before I started my investment firm, Nurture Venture, in 2019. And I have a distinct honor to work in all the healthcare players. So those are hospitals, clinic, health plan, of course, life sciences, so med device and pharma. Played variety of roles from CIO, CTO, COO to CEO. Founded 3 companies, all healthcare. One failed. Learned a lot from the failed one, but 2 had good exits. And then in 2019, I started my investment firm, Nurture Ventures. We invest in tech B2B post-revenue. So not just healthcare, but any tech B2B post-revenue. We have invested now in 40 companies. Of course, health is part of our portfolio. So happy to be here and happy to moderate this amazing panel for next 45 minutes. So let's do a brief intro about each one of them, and then I'll have some follow-up questions.
Hi there. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Jay Srinivasan. I'm the CEO at Truvian. Truvian is a late-stage diagnostic company that's in blood diagnostics. For the folks who actually remember a story in blood diagnostics a few years ago that was unfortunately didn't end well, the easiest way to explain what Truvian does is the following. So we're that company, but we work, and so. And the most important thing about that is that, over the last, 3-4 years, we've been able to demonstrate the product and its performance live. We placed our product at Health right on the conference floor and being able to give people their blood test, the annual blood test, in under 30 minutes relative to what is 2 to 4 days, in the current standard of care. Truvian is also obviously getting ready to commercialize business outside the United States after we do our FDA submission. So it's sort of an exciting time for us. I've been in diagnostics pretty much my entire career. I started my career at Abbott. I've done a couple stints there, leading businesses. I went and worked for companies like Digene that got purchased by a company called QIAGEN, and Beckman Coulter by Danaher, and Genmark most recently by Roche. So I've had a little bit of a journey that's given me perspective both on technology as well as on leadership. Diagnostics is very interesting, as you know. It had its heydays. It sort of lost its way a little bit, but had its heyday during the pandemic. But it really made it valuably important and clear that that is the only thermometer you could use in healthcare to really get to understanding one's health. So looking forward to the panel.
Thank you, Jay. I'm on the other end of the spectrum, work for Siemens Healthineers, which is one of the global leaders in 70,000 people, large diagnostic companies, and not the startup environment. But within that, I lead a Center for Innovation in Diagnostics. So my focus is more like a startup. I sort of look at emerging opportunities. It's really about keeping an eye on the trend, because when you get to be a large diagnostic company, you end up doing where you get the money. So which is, print out more of the same things and do that. But as all these technologies, as the emerging opportunities come, is really the question of who's going to eat your lunch, right? I mean, Truvian is definitely along the path to do some of that. And we are excited for companies like Truvian to come. And, the previous company that he talked about also used Siemens, unfortunately, in a very poor way to try and demonstrate their usefulness. I've been, again, also in diagnostics my entire career, working career, started almost 30 years ago. I've been a San Diego resident for over 30 years and worked in both pharma and the diagnostic but really asked some fundamental questions right in the beginning of my career, along with a few of us, and we started a small group based on a simple fact that what we were seeing in diagnostics at the time, 30 years ago, was really, if you sort of go back to early start of 1900s, seaweed and agar. People are doing diagnostics based on techniques that were really 30, 40, 50 years old. And we started getting into this get a taste for what innovation in that space would look like. And that led me to start a small company within, it's not an independent startup, but it's within a pharma company. Eventually got acquired by Abbott, and you'll hear the same Abbott name multiple times today, it appears. But worked and got commercial grade technology developed there. Eventually went from there to global health. So I have a lot of experience sort of looking at it from a access to care market. These are where places essentially can't afford the diagnostics or don't even have same technologies and solutions. So how do you make technologies that are more universally accessible? And what we saw during COVID, it actually came back that US was not a really access to care market in the sense, meaning there was not access everywhere. Pockets of the country, 30 to 40% of the country didn't have access to the diagnostics right. So the kinds of tools that you hear Truvian developing, others, these are all essential to get to that point of access to care, so we'll talk more about it. Now I lead this Center for Innovation within Siemens Healthineers, and excited to be here.
So I'm Puja Pathak. I'm the VP and General Manager for breast imaging at GE Healthcare. GE Healthcare is a $20 billion spin out. As you may know, GE was a global conglomerate that over the last couple of years has been spinning out by sector. So GE Healthcare is a dedicated healthcare, primarily imaging, but also some pharmaceutical diagnostics. Within that, I lead a $400 million breast imaging business, which includes equipment, services, software, and AI. Again, breast imaging is very much about access and screening because you're trying to screen women, right, once a year for the prevention of breast cancer. Although it's a sizable business, really flattish growth, and not super profitable versus overall GE Healthcare. So I joined the company about 2 years ago with a mandate of turning it around to drive, top line and bottom line growth through new product innovation, number one. Number two, sort of really commercial excellence globally. Again, screening is a global business, and then the third element is inorganic growth. So really an exciting space, lots of opportunity in imaging and innovation with AI, but also some consistent themes with what the other two speakers spoke about is screening is really about access, right? So how do you leverage AI? How do you simplify equipment? How do you leverage services to enable global access to screening? So then prior to GE Healthcare, I'm an engineer by background and started in cancer research. The first half of my career was in management consulting and private equity, and the last 10, 12 years were actually in point-of-care diagnostics. So the other part of diagnostics, worked for a company called Alere in a number of different strategy and commercial roles. That company was acquired by Abbott, stayed with Abbott managing their emerging markets portfolio, and then joined the same CEO in their next company, which is sort of a predecessor actually to Truvian. That company kind of grew a lot through COVID, like 10x, but then also struggled after COVID and was recently acquired by Roche. That was Lumira DX. So look forward to the discussion today.
Can you hear me now? All right. Well, thanks for spending an hour of your Saturday with us. My name is Bobby Ghoshal. I work for a company called ResMed. I don't know if you guys have heard of ResMed, but we are the world's largest connected healthcare company. We solve for sleep apnea. It's a disease that afflicts about 1 billion people across the world. And I bet there's few in this room who probably suffer from sleep apnea and may not even know about it. I've been with ResMed the last 12 years, and we've been on this journey from being a traditional medical device company to being a technology-enabled, really a tech company today. I manage our software business, which was zero 8 years ago. Today, it's a $600 million ARR business. So the intersection of IoT, healthcare, technology, devices, edge computing, healthcare, I've seen it all. And we are one of the few companies uniquely positioned trying to change how healthcare is delivered across the world using technology. And I hope, Shashi, will get to it in the conversation. So we span from the screening to diagnostics to therapy to what is a huge problem is keeping people on therapy, in a way that you continue to derive great benefits from the use of the medical devices. There's lots of use cases to talk about. I'm just raring to go on the questions. Go ahead, Shashi.
Thank you, Bobby. And we all know that healthcare is pretty broad. I mean, within healthcare, we have so many players, hospital, clinic, health plan, med device, pharma, biotech, technology, AI. And then we were given this subject, you can read it, how broad this is. And then we were told to do all this in 45 minutes. But we'll try. We have done our prep work. One of the things in healthcare is important to be on the same page, all of us, is what challenges we are facing. And when I spoke to Bobby, he described really well. So Bobby, I'll point this question towards you. Paint a picture about, to all of us, in current US healthcare market today, at a very high level, what different challenges we are facing around baby boomer, on quality, on the cost, on the quality, access to the healthcare. I know you spoke to me when we spoke, so just share with all of us, what the basic challenges we are facing at a macro view in US healthcare system?
It's one that it's a great question. It's a very broad question. There's multiple dimensions to this challenge, and a lot of the panelists talked about the access problem. So I'll explain maybe two aspects of this. One is, I mentioned sleep apnea afflicts 1 billion people across the world. In the US, it's roughly somewhere just south of 100 million people who suffer from sleep apnea. Guess how many of those 100 million are being treated today as we speak? 5 or 6 million, right? So you think about it, the issue is not a whole lot of people know about, they know that they're not sleeping well, but do they know they have sleep apnea? No. When they go to their primary care physician or to their doctor, most of the time they're misdiagnosed or given a sleeping pill, you don't sleep well, so that even the journey through diagnosis is very difficult. Although the fact is, the data for this is out there, it's simple. It's just a very complex system that does not know how to provide the right kind of care to the right person at the right time. So we have this I'd say, funnel issue in terms of the people who are saying, I didn't sleep well last night, what do I do? To getting somebody on therapy. So that's one aspect. The other aspect, and we're seeing that in the healthcare software business that I run, is most of my customers are providers. And they have a business to run. They spend, if you look at their P&L, anywhere between 60 to 80% of their expenses on labor, on staffing. Guess how much they spend on technology? Anyone wants to guess? It's less than 1%. So just think about that equation. How many industries do you know today that can sustain itself by investing 1% of their P&L on tech and 60 to 80% on labor? This arbitrage and this equation is what we are trying to solve. Because this is a dramatic issue, but underlying this, there's a lot of opportunity in the technology that we have.
Thank you, Bobby. Puja, when I spoke to you, you talked about, because we are talking about transformational innovation and all the changes coming into the healthcare business model. So you spoke about how healthcare industry, especially when it comes to transformation and innovation, new types of business models are coming on our way. So can you touch a little bit more on what those new types of business model we are talking about, Puja?
Sure, yeah. So there's many examples, I think, in the diagnostic space. I think we have to be creative, right? Because today, if you think about it, I think diagnostics account for like 80, 90% of all healthcare decisions. It's a very famous statistic, right? But the spend on diagnostics versus the overall healthcare system is 2%, I believe, right? So I think in diagnostics, we kind of have to be creative about how, but maybe I'll piggyback on what Bobby said. In breast imaging, if you think about it, you know, in the it's a global problem. Even in a developed market like the US, where there's free, right? Screening is free, whether or not you even have insurance. Yet only 1 in 2 women that are of screening age actually go to get a mammogram every year. So if you think about, and of the 200 countries plus there are in the world, only 25 have national screening programs. So when you, and so there's the woman, and then in order to deploy breast imaging, then you need the equipment. Then you need the radiologist. You actually need the service and staff. You not just need the budget, but you also need the capabilities. So as you think about business model and expanding access, you know, typically diagnostics is a large capital equipment business where, you know, you have the imaging center, then you need the whole infrastructure for the technologists and radiologists. And then, but then if you want to expand that into, to get to those 50% of women in rural communities or underserved communities, if you want to go to Southeast Asia or remote parts of even some parts of Africa that want, then you have to go from, you know, just selling equipment to coming in with a total solution. That solution includes, can you automate reading? Can you help the technologist on the ground? And then in order to enable those things, you kind of also think about how do you shift the business model from a capital equipment to sort of a price per exam, right? So you develop the digital technology to say, okay, every woman should get screened, but 90% of them are normal. They can go back and live their lives. Do you need an expert radiologist? Can you automate those things? If you can do that, then can you go at risk and actually get paid for those 90% of tests and only leverage the few radiologists that you have in those underserved communities to focus on those, the most difficult cases and the ones that might have cancer. So I think thinking critically about that funnel, right? I think funnel is a big thing, right, in diagnostics. And how can you automate parts of the funnel? How can you get paid to delivering that value? I think that's, so the shift, I think to summarize, the shift from CapEx to more of a what you would call SaaS, but, you know, paying per exam, pay for performance is I think one that's gonna really enable access, but also enable growth in the diagnostic space.
So I just want to add a little bit color to it. I mean, some of you sitting in the room who are designing your product and solutions for healthcare and trying to look for pricing. As Puja touched on, going after this model of software as a service, meaning you're charging a monthly fee based on the test, many of you may even struggle, should I charge per test or should I charge per month, irrespective of how many tests a hospital clinic can do? And if you apply your mind from the patient care perspective, because at the end of the day, if we are testing more and more patient, we all win. I know I used to work for a company in diagnostic business, and we struggle on that. Should we charge per patient, or should we charge per month and let the hospital clinic test as many they want? Again, at the end of the day, this is your decision, but think about patient care into the aspect of it. And we are in healthcare, we all know, we have 2 types of payment model, fee for services and value-based care. Within the value-based care, there's lots of other detail like Medicare Advantage, risk-based contract. So think about those pricing model also, because in fee for services model, the healthcare system get paid per episode, but in value-based care model, it's very different ballgame altogether. So are you, when you are designing product and solutions, willing to take risk with the hospital clinic on those value-based care model where you are providing benefits to them, and in turn, you are sharing some risk with them. So think about all those aspects when you're designing solution, especially around pricing and business model. So thank you, Puja. Ranga, I was very impressed with your background, that your variety of skill set. And when I spoke to you, you said, when you're designing your product and solution for healthcare, think about different dimensions. You talked about new product development. You talked about customer experience. You talked about clinical insights. And when anyone designing product solutions, they have to think all those aspects of it. So can you shed a little bit more light to it?
Certainly. Again, this is fundamentals of any product design, right? So we saw the Qualcomm talk before and all that. But when it comes to healthcare in particular, let me, again, phrase this as a question. What is the one fundamental thing that 95% of the people, I'll bet here, will give an answer to as a yes, is who all want to live longer, right? This has been the wonder of wonders all through our life. We all know we are mortal, yet everybody wants to live longer. What happens as you live longer? You're essentially at some point getting to the point where your health conditions essentially need testing. But increasingly what we have seen now is an awareness towards what you might call wellness, right? So if there is a factor sort of that is influencing healthcare decision now, we can call it precision healthcare, individualized healthcare, and so on, where I as an individual want to get more ahead of my own lifestyle, and all the things that I want. Like I want to demand certain things, get certain results. So from consumerization perspective, that's what I sort of think about is, how do I address this sort of growing and educated population, especially post-COVID, where everybody now realizes the old model till 2020 of saying you need to go to a healthcare system and interface with that to get your health parameters or even wellness parameters looked at is not realistic. So that's one aspect. From a clinical excellence perspective, as a provider, what do I want to do? I want to make sure that I have all the information. So I'm smarter than the ChatGPT or the Google that you're going to go to. What value do I bring to you? What can I do to make sure that you have all this disparate parts of information that may be collected, the imaging side, the diagnostic, in vitro diagnostic, what you may be doing with your watch and all these things. But I need to be able to quickly come back and tell you, hey, with all of these, you're likely to go on to develop something. Let me take care of that, or you're fine, you're just a worried well, go home, take care of yourself, we'll come back when there's other thing. So how does a doctor or a provider, in this case, whoever the provider might be, how do they interface with that? As a technology developer, how do I then look at all of this and say, look, I need to be able to customize, create solutions that somebody's going to want to use. And for them to be able to use that, what is the additional value I'm going to get? How do I, first of all, do a design that's not going to take me 20 years to come up with a design because market is changing underneath it? How can I use the current technologies, whether it's AI or anything else that you do, to bring more efficiency into a product design, into a better thing? But design is just one aspect of it. More often than not, the biggest place where we have not done well is clinical insights. I can give you a lot of data. The data is just useless piece of information until somebody puts them all together, gather something out of it, and provide some meaningful insight into it. So to me, as I look at all of these things, it's not just about another technology. A shiny new toy is not going to save the world. What we need is collecting all this information, a lot of data that we're collecting. How do I translate that into a meaningful bite-sized information from a patient perspective, or maybe not even a patient, an individual perspective? What piece of information is that person going to take away from an interaction with a physician? So if we can sort of look at it from that ecosystem perspective, I think we'll be much better ultimately at delivering the product that they need.
Thank you, Ranga. Jay, you have launched this product, and you yourself pointed out you're trying to dispel, I don't know what's the right word, rumor or established myth that a fact that someone tried to do something similar, and you're changing somewhat their perception, that thinking. And that's not easy in healthcare. And in healthcare, we all know changing a workflow itself is very hard. So when you're designing this solution and launching this to the market, walk the audience through what challenge you faced and how did you go about even coming up with such innovative model into the market?
Yeah. So, I think I'm just going to piggyback and stand on the shoulder of the giants before me. But like, if you just think about Truvian, just a little bit about sort of how I speak about the company is that, we've always believed that we want to do blood testing for anyone anywhere. But the way I always say this to our investors and to folks I meet is that I grew up in a military family in India. My father was a career Air Force officer, and so, I never lived in a town for more than 2 years of my life, so that sort of pays for some of that mental health I need. But in India and most of the old world, there's a concept of sort of a nukkad or end of street. That's where people meet. That's where people fall in love. That's where people fight. That's where the pharmacy is. And that's where I want to be, right? That's how I say our story, because we to give health care, which is a fundamental human right at scale, you have to be able to provide access, to be able to provide it at an affordable price, and to be able to do exactly what you heard from the other folks on the panel, is that you have to be able to provide timely insights. That's the thesis on which we built Truvian. So the thesis was, why would your blood travel after you had it just drawn when you're still sitting there in a doctor's office or near a doctor's office, right? So why does that exist? And so why not be able to have your blood drawn, the new workflow, have it tested on a product like ours, have those results available in the EMR, and sit down and actually have the consult, because you will lose everyone, you lose me to life if you didn't get to me fast enough. That's really what we've seen. The issue with blood testing, but it's true with any diagnostic, Bobby brought it up as well, is that while most people don't adhere to sort of their doctor, the physician advised test, because it just takes time and it's too friction laden. So about half of the United States is walking around with some sort of chronic condition that they're not aware of. So how do you really solve for that? That was important. But the piece about sort of bringing a product like this to market, and we're not launched yet, I gotta be careful because there may be regulators in the audience, but we are getting ready to submit to the FDA, shortly, and then we will launch OUS and, after approvals in the United States and Canada. But one of the embodying thesis of trying to dispel or sort of negate what happened before is that, if you foundationally believe that every person you serve in healthcare is part of your broader family, you will always do the right thing. That's the moral sort of compass that is required if you're in healthcare, right? Because healthcare itself is foundationally built on the original Hippocrates oath, first do no harm, right? That's where it starts. The second most important thing is you have to build a product that is going to foundationally add value to everyone in the value equation, right? So that starts with the patients, then the providers and the payers, right? Patients need to see value and be able to actually alter their lives, live longer, and longevity is huge. Providers need to be able to survive and be able to be successful and provide the quality of care that they actually went to medical school or alternate schools for, and payers need to be able to address the cost curve. I mean, in the United States, like the cost of care, which is chronic care, which is really where everybody goes to, chronic care is healthcare today, is not sustainable. And so bending that cost curve becomes really important. So in order to be able to do all those things, the first and most important thing is that the product's got to work. And you have to foundationally demonstrate it. So the way we thought about that thesis was, we can't put this product behind the walls of our company. It needs to be out front so that everyone can see it. If you walk into Truvian, you're gonna see just glass, basically. So everything is behind glass, you can see what it is. And that's how we foundationally sort of even set up our offices. You can walk right in, if you come today. And one of the things I'm gonna request is we're doing a clinical trial, and this is a CEO's sort of pitch. But one of the things we do need is donors, right? So we always need donors because we're always doing the trial. You're all welcome to come to Truvian. I'll even send sort of like, the organizers a bulletin from us. You can come get your blood drawn. You even have, depending on what sort of study you get involved in, you'll have the ability to run your own test. We want you to run your own test, because at the end of the day, this product's going to be available for the receptionist in a physician's office to be able to run it without the requirement to address that labor shortage. So building that capability was important, and regulation is absolutely foundational, right? So I don't believe contesting with regulatory bodies, which is what the previous sort of company did, was any path forward, okay? We felt that we needed to have regulations be centered to how we do it, because at the end of the day, it's intended for one purpose, to ensure the safety and efficacy of the products we build. And finally, we've brought in leadership around us who can serve as our moral compass as well. So Dr. Sakul, who sits right there, is part of our advisory board, and he has this, he's a luminary in this field, but has also been engaged in building some of the most most memorable products that the industry has seen. So bringing leaders like him around us will make us a successful company.
Thank you, Jay. Part of innovation is also coming up with creative way of thinking. And Bobby, I know your history of your career when ResMed, we all know, is a big company, and he pitched the idea of starting this software business within a big company. So Bobby, explain to audience, how did you go about even starting this, incubating this small idea, and now you are running 400 million? Think about 400 million ARR. This is not the valuation. ARR company within a big billion-dollar company.
Actually, it's a
And
600.
Bobby, before you answer the question, why isn't it 600 million? Just kidding. Go ahead.
It's actually 600 plus million. But that's not important, right? What's really important is you have this in the title, it's patient care. Let me tell you a story here, what was going on. This was about 12 years ago. There's a bit of an existential crisis going on in this industry around medical devices, home medical equipment providers. These are HMEs, or they're also called DMEs, durable medical equipment providers. If your doctor writes a prescription that's for something other than a drug, this prescription goes to an HME, who then set up the patient with the medical device, and it could be anything related to sleep or diabetes or heart condition or even bent metal, a variety of things that you set up the patient for. And what was happening is Medicare at that time, looking at their expenses, made the decision that they were going to cut reimbursement for sleep apnea care by 47% on average, 47%. For HME providers who are running their business on a razor-thin margin of 8 to 9% max, the most profitable ones, this is like a death sentence. And the whole industry was in this spiral. This was around 2012, 2013, about what to do. Our competitors basically started to lower prices, to think about, we're going to lower prices and maybe our providers, the customers will be able to manage through. What ResMed did was completely counterintuitive. We actually added a cell phone chip into a CPAP device, made the product more expensive. But what we did was bring the care and the access to the machine, to the patient's care, right to the physician, the clinician, and the patient all at the same time, all online. So the care delivery that was happening, a lot of it face-to-face, patients had to bring their machine to the HME's office to figure out if something is not working, or if they weren't really having trouble with the therapy, they had to have a face-to-face consult with the physician and bring the machine along. And we changed that entire paradigm by making each of these devices online, and that led us to becoming the world's largest connected software healthcare med device company. But there was a missing piece. These HMEs were about 5,000 of them in the US. They didn't know how to run their business effectively on these devices that are online. So there's this company called Trari, who had the ERP system or the EHR system that the HMEs used. We looked at this company, and I raised my hand and said, I think this is a company we should acquire. Even as a medical device company, it's a software company, I get it, but this is an important piece of the puzzle. So I led the acquisition of Trari, and what we did with the Trari software is the patient management. We automated the device management workflow and the patient management and the reimbursement, connected an end-to-end flow so that a HME could set up a patient, and then after that, everything would be pretty automated and integrated end-to-end. That took about half the cost of care out of the system. Remember I mentioned Medicare reduced reimbursement by 47%? This is how we help the whole industry become sustainable, even under those very existential crises, by changing the device itself connecting, and then the workflow through the software. And when we put two and two together, that was transformative for the industry. And we believe that's actually a secret. So that led us to think, all right, where else can we do this? And we started to look across different areas. This is skilled nursing or home health. So we started to acquire more and more businesses and software businesses. That's how we grew from the zero, which was 8 years ago, to greater than $600 million business. But really the key here is we improve patient care.
Yeah, so I mean, many of us, we all are in healthcare, and we face this situation when a problem or challenge comes to us. How do we think out of the box thinking? And clearly, Bobby, good job leading through that change. Puja, when I spoke to you, speak to us a little bit about, many of in the audience may not know, GE Healthcare also has a venture, and you guys encourage startup and investing into the startup. Speak what that environment is, so about your investment from the GE Healthcare.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, so GE has a number of different investment vehicles, right? So we have a venture arm where we invest in, then we have the M&A arm, we have business development. A lot of these things, as I'm sure as entrepreneurs and investors you're familiar with, is we'll try before you buy, right? So we'll invest in companies, try to get board seats, try to do distribution deals, just to understand the fit with our business, and then before we move forward. But a lot of it is sort of thinking through, how do you solve, again, you just talked about it, but you have this piece of equipment that can do one thing, right? And then how do you build in the, either on edge or online or even integrated into the equipment itself, how do you then build on top of that a lot of the software that can enable to solve a lot of the downstream issues, whether it's reading. So when we think about, and I think you talked, the choice between capital equipment and SaaS, you have the luxury to do it early on, right? For an established business, it's very hard, because in the early stages, the revenue, it's obvious, but the revenue per year is lower. So it's hard for us as we think about turning around. We know it's the right direction, but in the near term, it's a huge hit. So the only way that we can actually think about doing this is by adding on, right? How do we build? So we have this, we call it, like when you put the equipment, you have a socket or an opportunity. And then that for screening, let's say 5,000 women per year with that piece of equipment. So then if you want to think about, when I think about acquisitions, what I think about is, okay, of those 5,000 women, what is preventing it from going from 5 to 10,000? What is preventing the quality of the exam? Right now they're throwing out 500 exams. Can I improve the overall, right? And so those are the types, then I say, okay, if I can get those better outcomes, then that's a piece of software that I would want to add, or a workflow addition, or even service. Like we're thinking about, employing our own service organizations. But all of these are typically now going forward, the way we think about it is thinking about it on a per use basis, and then thinking, and then, working. And so right now we're, and you like to try experiments. So we're trying 4 or 5 experiments today, either distributing product or co-developing product. Working with customers is also a great way to do this. Customers don't want the traditional transactional relationship. They have the patient, you can immediately demonstrate clinical value by saying, okay, let's put this software on, let's try it in your site, let's see what impact it has on clinicians. So it's sort of a journey, but it's, the ultimate goal is sort of moving towards this, today we're 50-50 CapEx versus, recurring revenue, what you would call. And as we think about shifting that plus 20% or so over the next couple of years, it's a journey, but it has to come back to delivering better outcomes for the patient. It's not just another widget that you kind of buy and you try to force it onto the customer. That just doesn't work.
Thank you, Puja. Ranga, you have done a lot of product development and you have launched many products into the market. Walk us through to the audience about how do you deal with regulatory challenges? Because healthcare, we all have to deal with that and still be innovative and still be transformative.
Yeah, let me start off with what Jay said here. I mean, regulatory does not automatically mean your enemy, right? So the first thing as a product developer is embrace the fact that you need those regulators on your side, because what they're trying to do is very important. I would not want an unapproved product being tested on me, so why am I developing a product? Why am I fighting the regulator who's doing this? Once you have that mindset, the earliest thing, and we have done this, we have, a small startup, what we were developing, 25, 26 years ago here in Carlsbad was, at that time, revolutionary technology that essentially the data was exploding, right? The amount of data we would get back. And FDA was on a one test, one result mindset, because this is, again, 25 years ago. They didn't know how to deal with the complexity. We took on a journey, what we call a educate the regulator journey, right? Work with them. They're very receptive because they know new technologies are coming. They don't have the bandwidth to keep up, and they can't, you don't see any regulators here. They're working on so many products coming at them, they're not getting the time to educate. So we set up time to meet with them to educate them on why the values, not just why we're doing something cool and they should pay attention, but the value that we were trying to bring. And the problem we're trying to solve, just to make it more specific, I've been working in the field of infectious disease, diagnostics, and sepsis. Sepsis is one of the largest killers, is the largest killers in hospitals. Even today, in the US, one of the most advanced healthcare country, or you can take any other advanced country that you can pick, there's 30% mortality from sepsis happening today, which means 1 in 3 people coming into the hospital don't leave alive. Why is that happening, right? So we had a paradigm shifting technology at that time, but we couldn't deal with a paradigm shifting technology with a regulator who's stuck in 20 years ago. So one of the first key things for us was work with them. They're willing to listen to you, show the value. We did a lot of experiments, a lot of both thought experiments as well as other demonstrations show we were not developing something completely, that they couldn't trust. Build the trust, right? So that's the first thing. Second is building a panel. I mean, whether it's with your key experts, with the scientific community, all of whom are sort of leading towards the same end goal. Bring with you not just you as a snake oil vendor, the product developer as you're called, but bring the experts in the field with you, right? So bringing that along, publications, all of these things sort of add credibility and credence to what you're developing that ultimately leads to. I see that we have 1 minute, so I'll pass it back to you, but in general, that would be a good way to do it.
Yeah, no, thank you. I wish we had more time. As you can see how talented this panel is, and they are going to be here. You can reach out to them. All I'll say is that in healthcare, in 2023, we spent $4.7 trillion. $4.7 trillion, 18% of our GDP. Out of that 4.7, $1 trillion is a waste. And here is the opportunity for all of us sitting in the room and including all of us. So don't be disappointed. Yes, healthcare has regulation. Yes, healthcare has moved slow, but opportunity is humongous. Go for it, build innovative product, investor in the room, please invest. I continue to invest. So don't be disappointed and meet with each of these panels afterwards to seek any expert advice or thoughts or comments. So thank you, panelists, for being part of here. It was a pleasure to be moderating you guys, and thank you all of you be part of here today.